Well, for more on this now, we're joined by Conservative MP and longtime civil liberties advocate David Davis. David, we're interested to speak to you because you have been very outspoken about tech regulation throughout your career. First of all, we were just having that conversation with Simon Cooper about Elon Musk being at the AI summit. Do you think it was necessary for him to be there?
Yes, I do, in truth. I mean, I wouldn't overestimate the effect he would have, but the very fact he was there gave it a degree of gravitas, a degree of seriousness. I mean, the truth of the matter is, although I think it's going to be a hell of a lot harder than any of the governments imagine to actually regulate AI, Rishi Sunak's pulled off a bit of a diplomatic coup here. He's got a whole series of people to attend what is effectively the world's first AI colloquium, if you like, a state-level colloquium. And he's had very important people there, so that's not, there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't fuss too much about him having dinner at number 10 any more than I would about, I don't know, Rupert Murdoch having dinner at number 10.
Yeah, well, fair enough, fair comment. Look, that photo op that we just saw on the screen there, they had everyone lined up on the stage. It looked like the G20 summit or the G7. This is a major summit, this AI safety summit being held at Bletchley Park in the UK. They signed this Bletchley Declaration to talk about the first steps. We're hearing a lot of good things out of it. But for some who are analysing the space and analysing AI ethics and the development of the industry, they're saying it's not going far enough. It's failing in terms of safety measures.
Yeah, well, I basically think they misunderstand what's necessary. Look, the European Union rushed in very quickly at the beginning to put in some AI regulation, and it's turned out to be clunky and ineffective and probably overburdensome, and they'll almost certainly have to rewrite it. I mean, what we're going to have to design is not a set of regulations, it's a whole system for dealing with this. I mean, look, if you look back to the 1930s, a long time ago, when there were new technologies like aviation and medicine and antibiotics coming into being, what happened was not a single regulation, but a whole system. So if an aircraft crashed, the Federal Aviation Authority or somebody went along, looked at it and said, okay, that was the pilot, we need to retrain pilots in this way. That was the design of the aircraft, we need to change the designs. That was a regulatory problem, we need to change air traffic control. And that's been evolving for nearly a century since, exactly the same with medicines. Now, you're going to have to do the same with AI, but faster and slicker. And so far, I've not actually seen, I mean, there's lots of good aspiration, and I don't argue with that, but I haven't seen really any move towards that. I haven't even seen, in truth, a proper analysis of the different sorts of risks that we're facing with AI. I mean, I smiled rather when I saw that President Biden suddenly decided this was important after watching a Tom Cruise film, which I hope is not going to be the driver. I mean, after all, AI has been in Hollywood since at least the film 2001, and has been in fiction long before that with Isaac Asimov and so on. What's happening is a lot of not very technically competent leaders are waking up to something which the public is going to care about. And it's going to care about because it will impinge in various ways on the safety of the public. There are these dramatic proposals, but it's also in the shorter term. I mean, things like your tax affairs, or being fired from your employment because an AI decides you haven't done your job properly. Those sorts of things are going to be very important. Even now, we've got this week a police minister talking about using CCTV facial recognition in policing. That's a form of AI. It's a fairly early form of AI. It doesn't work. 80% of it's wrong. It's discriminatory against minorities and against women. We've got to actually grip it at a whole series of different levels, including the way government uses it. Because I think in many ways, the sloppiest user of AI at the moment is government.
Yeah, well, that's the complication, isn't it? The marking of the homework, as you've put it, when you've written on Twitter about this, or X rather. Who marks their own homework? If we allow the developers of AI to develop the regulation, they're marking the homework. If we allow governments to do it, they're marking the homework of the way they want to use and deploy AI. So who is fit to create the regulation?
Well, I think, firstly, it's obviously not the AI creators themselves, but you have to have them on board to understand what they're doing. I mean, after all, in many ways, they start to be taken sufficiently seriously after some of the creator of ChatGPT himself said this is dangerous. So that's the first thing. So governments will have to do that. But, it's going to be quite hard to even get that to work because, are we going to get China to come along? We had China at this conference quite properly, in my view, but are we going to keep China on board with this? Similarly, when you get to managing governments, well, the democracies themselves are going to have to watch very carefully what's going on. That's why I made my point on Twitter, X, whatever, that actually Parliament hasn't got the first idea of how it's going to control government's use of AI. So you've got a whole series of layers, and this won't be solved in a couple of weeks, a couple of days conference in Turing's home in Bletchley. It's going to take a systematic approach, which will take us through the next few decades. As I said, as has happened with earlier technologies. The difference with this technology, however, there's one fundamental difference I think it's very important to remember. When an engineer sets out to design an aeroplane, or when a pharmacist sets out to design a drug, they are trying to create something which behaves in a predictable manner. And so you can regulate something that behaves in a predictable manner. When you draw up a new artificial intelligence, which learns from its own enormous databases, you actually design something that's going to behave in an unpredictable manner, even for the designer. And there's a real philosophical problem. How the devil do you control something which is designed to be unpredictable?
How the devil, indeed. David Davis, MP, we appreciate your attempt there, though, laying out some framework for some sort of regulation. We appreciate your time. Thanks.